The Fall of the House of Usher. During the whole of a dull, dark, and soundless day in the autumn of the year, when the clouds hung oppressively
Goosey, goosey gander, whither shall I wander? Up the stairs and down the stairs, and in my lady's chamber. There I met an old man who wouldn't say his prayers. So I took him by his left leg and threw him down the stairs.
Morella. With a feeling of deep yet most singular affection, I regarded my friend, Morella. Thrown by accident into her society many years ago, my soul, from our first meeting, burned with fires it had never before known. But the fires would not avail us, and bitter and tormenting to my spirit was the gradual conviction. Old Mother Hubbard. Old Mother Hubbard went to the cupboard to give the poor dog a bone. When she came there, the cupboard was bare, and so the poor dog had none. She went to the baker's to buy him some bread. When she came back, the dog was dead. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, Chapter 1. Tom. No answer. Tom. What's gone with that boy, I wonder? You, Tom. The old lady pulled her spectacles down and looked over them about the room. Then she put them up and looked out under them. She seldom or never looked through them for so small a thing as a boy, for they were her state pair, the pride of her heart, and they were built for her style, not service. I sat there on the log as the smoke from the fire hit my face. We, as a group of teenage natives, watched as Chief Mays ground up an extremely large human tooth. He brushed the residue of powder from his hands into the bowl with the rest of the white powdered substance, and passed the bowl around to us.
Clone from the ancient extinct race of Uton, hunted down by the barbarians and into the era of Van Helsing. He hasn't been stopped. It hasn't been stopped. The supernatural giant with hair made of tarantula twine and muscles molded from that of Achilles. The main event monster, Fulton. Born into the streets of young Scotland was a boy with the curiosity of a feline and the strength of a bear. This boy would soon be trapped in the flames of the eternal, but would soon rise as a man, a warrior, an outlaw so rugged, so ruthless, that Hades thought he would be better left alone on earth than in his fiery pits of death. A warrior that legend refers to as the Scottish War Machine. A warrior known as Crixus.
Treasure Island, Part 1, Chapter 1. Squire Trelawney, Dr. Livesley, and the rest of these gentlemen having asked me to write down the whole particulars about Treasure Island, from the beginning to the end, keeping nothing back but the bearings of the island, and that only because there is still treasure not yet lifted. I take up my pen in the year of grace 17, and go back to the time when my father kept the Admiral Benbow Inn, and the brown old seaman with the saber cut first took up his lodging under our roof. I remember him as if it were yesterday, as he came plodding to the inn door, his sea chest falling behind him in a hand barrow, a tall, strong, heavy, nut-brown man, his tarry pigtail falling over the shoulders of his soiled blue coat, his hands ragged and scarred with black, broken nails, and the saber cut across one cheek, a dirty, livid white. I remember him looking round the cove and whistling to himself as he did so, and then breaking out into that old sea song that he sang so often afterwards. 15 men on the dead man's chest, yo ho ho, and a bottle of rum. In the high, old, tottering voice that seemed to have been tuned and broken at the capstan bars. Then he rapped on the door with a bit of stick, like a handspike that he carried, and when my father appeared, called roughly for a glass of rum. This, when it was brought to him, he drank slowly, like a connoisseur, lingering on the taste, and still looking about him at the cliffs and up at our signboard.
"This is a handy cove," says he at length, "and a pleasant situated grog shop. Much company, mate?"
My father told him no, very little company, the more was the pity.
"Well then," said he, "this is the berth for me. Here you, matey,"
he cried to the man who trundled the barrow.
"Bring up alongside and help up my chest. I'll stay here a bit."
He continued,
"I'm a plain man. Rum and bacon and eggs is what I want. And that head up there for to watch the ships off. What might you call me? You might call me Captain. Oh, I'll see where you're at there."
And he threw down 3 or 4 gold pieces onto the threshold. And indeed, bad as his clothes were, and coarsely as he spoke, he had none of the appearance of a man who sailed before the mast, but seemed like a mate or skipper, accustomed to be obeyed or to strike. The man who came with the barrow told us the mail had set him down the morning before at the Royal George, that he had inquired what inns there were along the coast, and hearing ours well spoken of, I suppose, and described as lonely, had chosen it from the others for his place of residence. And that was all we could learn of our guest. A Journey to the Center of the Earth. Chapter 1. My uncle makes a great discovery. Looking back to all that has occurred to me since that eventful day, I am scarcely able to believe in the reality of my adventures. They were truly so wonderful that even now I am bewildered when I think of them. My uncle was a German, having married my mother's sister, an Englishwoman. Being very much attached to his fatherless nephew, he invited me to study under him in his home in the fatherland. This home was in a large town, and my uncle a professor of philosophy, chemistry, geology, mineralogy, and many other ologies. One day, after passing some hours in the laboratory, my uncle being absent at the time, I suddenly felt the necessity of renovating the tissues. I was hungry and was about to rouse up our old French cook when my uncle, Professor von Hartwig, suddenly opened the street door and came rushing up the stairs. Now, Professor Hardwig, my worthy uncle, is by no means a bad sort of man. He is, however, choleric and original. To bear with him means to obey, and scarcely had his heavy feet resounded within our joint domicile than he shouted for me to attend upon him. "Harry, Harry, Harry!" I hastened to obey, but before I could reach his room, jumping 3 steps at a time, he was stamping his right foot upon the landing. "Harry," he cried in a frantic tone, "are you coming up?" When we were very young, Jonathan Joe. Jonathan Joe has a mouth like an O, and a wheelbarrow full of surprises. If you ask for a bat, or for something like that, he has got it, whatever the size is. If you're wanting a ball, it's no trouble at all. Why, the more you ask for, the merrier. Like a hoop and a top, and a watch that won't stop, and some sweets and an Aberdeen Terrier. Jonathan Joe has a mouth like an O, but this is what makes him so funny. If you give him a smile once in a while, he never expects